You're listening to Exposed by the So Cultured Podcast.
We're your hosts,
Liv, Yaz,
and Taz.
three girls with a passion for science and tech.
Yep, and welcome to our thrilling new series.
This series, we are taking you on a journey to uncover the truth behind your fave TV shows and movies.
From the intergalactic adventures of Star Wars to the monstrous depths of the Meg.
And the chilling scenarios of zombie apocalypses.
Join us as we question whether these plots could ever happen in real life.
And reveal the scientific inaccuracies hidden on our screens.
And don't worry, we will still be dishing out the laboratory this season with some even crazier listener stories than ever before.
So grab your popcorn for a side of piping hot laboratory.
Before we get into it, remember that all opinions are our own and all our listener stories are alleged.
And now let's get into this week's episode of Exposed.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the So Culture Podcast. This is season 3, episode 3, and we are going to be talking about a really, really cool film, one of my fave sci-fi films ever. But before we get into that, I'm just trying to enjoy the nice weather that we've been having. And I have so many family barbecues because people, I don't know, like, is it just like a real British thing? Maybe it's like an Australian thing as well. But whenever the sun's out, you're just like, get the barbie out. And then I'm just drinking Pimm's, which again, I feel like is a really British drink. And I'm just obsessed with it. Like, I just want it to be summer all the time. What would you guys say your favorite thing about British summertime? Or I guess Taz, like Australian summertime.
Firstly, can I just say I've actually never tried Pimm's, which I feel like is a bit criminal. I've literally never tried Pimm's.
What?
Why? Why not? How?
Yeah, I don't really know. Like, I actually don't know how I've not tried it. But what does it taste like?
It's unique. It's got its own flavour. I don't think you can compare it.
Wow, maybe I need to try it.
And you have it with like mint, strawberries, like fresh strawberries, cucumber. What else do you put in it?
Yeah,
Lemonade.
you can put like whatever kind of fruit that you want, but typically it would be like strawberries, cucumber.
I love it. I love when all
said.
the alcohol's soaked into the fruit and then I just eat the fruit after. That's like my favourite
That sounds
part.
horrible.
Yeah. Well, I don't really like the fruit part. I'm not going to like I don't really eat the fruit afterwards. I'm just like, I can just chill in there. But
Oh, I love it. And you get Pimm's jugs. Like if you go to some festivals or pubs, you can sit outside and you can order like
I've
pitchers.
seen them.
So also, when I was in the US, I didn't realise pitchers are pitchers of beer. I was like, oh, what cocktails we getting? They were like, what do you mean we're getting pitchers? And I was like, yeah, like what we getting? And then they were like, this beer. And I was like, oh. So
I mean,
guess
that's
we just
quite
do different
normal.
things.
Like
pitcher of
you don't
beer?
really, yeah.
Oh, mate, I don't
Wait,
drink
actually,
beer. I just
maybe
thought it was
I've been like
cocktails.
accustomed to Australia too much because that's the thing here as well. Like pictures of beer.
Oh.
I've seen both. I've seen pictures of cocktails and pictures of beers. I've seen both.
Yeah, I think like with cocktails, like usually it's only like sangria and Pimm's, unless you go to
no,
like
you can
spoons.
get like woo-woo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I am an
spoons.
Aperol girl through and through. There is nothing better than a nice Aperol.
That's the worst thing ever. Yeah, it's a unique flavour. So anyone that's not tried it, I don't know if you can buy
Yeah.
it abroad, but if you're in the UK, Pimm's, you can even get them in little tinnies in the supermarket, which is like pre-made Pimm's. It's not the same, but it does the job. They're
Okay,
quite nice.
maybe I'll try it, but you just can't pull me away from my Aperol, to be fair. Like last night I was sat there, was watching TV, and Gage was like, do you want pina colada? And I was like, no babe, get me an Aperol. So I was sat there with my Aperol, was actually watching a ghost program, which I love, and we started having this really interesting chat about if you believe in ghosts, if you believe in aliens and things like that. And I guess that's just my question of the week. Do you guys believe in ghosts, and do you believe in aliens?
I guess they're two very different questions, right?
Okay, let's go ghosts first.
Ghosts, I want to come from like a scientific angle, but I don't know any of the science behind whether ghosts are actually real.
I'm just putting this out here right now that in like around Halloween time, we are doing like Halloween themed episodes. I want to do vampires. I want to do ghosts. I want to do it all.
Okay,
so maybe we'll cover it then. So maybe we'll save this conversation for Halloween time. So let's go with, do you guys believe in aliens?
Yeah, I do, but like not in the way that you would necessarily think, like not the little green man, but maybe like aliens in the form of like bacteria that we find on like a different planet or something like that, like not fun basically. Because isn't there like argument that if there was like a established species similar to humans but like advanced, then like it's possible that they would have found us by now. So although then an like link to that and like contradicting that point, apparently like we're really far away in terms of like the Milky Way galaxy, like we're like kind of right on the edge, so like it would actually be really hard even for an advanced society to get to us because we're like literally just so far away. So I think yes, but I think yeah, like in the basis of like bacteria or something like that.
I agree.
I think so. Or something, if there's maybe something similar to like a large body of water, there could be more what we think of like alien things in the water, organisms. One thing that I studied was ctenophores, which are the comb jellies, and they look quite alien-like because they're these gelatinous, like jelly-looking species, but they have these iridescent combs on the side, so they use them for like movement, and they just look so beautiful and so what I would think like alien. Well, we also think that when we go down right to the deep ocean floor, you literally have these weird and wonderful creatures that you would never assume would exist because we've just not been around them. So I think it would be something that is got like easy life form, not like us complex beings. What do you think, Liv?
Yeah, I agree with you guys. To be honest, I literally everything you've said, I echo.
Well, actually, that's really funny and interesting because we don't necessarily know about different life forms on other planets, but I'm going to be talking all about the Martian and how maybe we could sustain life on a different planet.
Yay, sounds exciting.
So we've kind of messed up Earth already, and there are obviously some billionaires looking to live on another planet. And so is there actually a future for us on Mars or somewhere else? And personally, I don't know how I feel about this, like people looking for life on other planets or looking to establish life on different planets, because we can establish that Earth is messed up. Like we should be fixing Earth rather than spending millions of pounds being like, let's colonize Mars. I think like it's great for space exploration and I get why people do it, but I also think like use your money to fix Earth or do some other stuff like, and also it's just going to be the billionaires that leave us and absolutely off and like can live a great life and we're all gonna die, like those films you can watch. Do you know what I mean? I just feel like it's so problematic.
Films, yeah,
exactly. I guess it is good that we maybe could move to another planet, and I guess one of the sci-fi films, The Martian, is a really, really good overview of what it could be like if we had to colonize a different planet. And so this film came out in 2015, and it was about how you could like maybe grow your own food there. And obviously today we are going to be looking a little bit deeper into the film. And so the film was directed by Ridley Scott, and it was originally a book written by Andy Weir.
And I'm actually going to surprise you guys and tell you that I've actually seen this film. I can't remember when I've seen it, but I have actually seen this film. So I am excited for this.
Yeah.
But for all of the lives out there, the people who don't watch TV series or films, and they're just, can you maybe give an overview of the plot? Let's get into what the film was about. I know you said obviously it was about like, can we grow food on Mars? But like, where did all of this start? Like, why are we suddenly on Mars? Let's start from the beginning.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, let's go from the beginning, because I'm not going to lie, I recently watched this film to refresh my memory, and it is long. It's 2 hours and 22 minutes. So the film starts with a NASA astronaut crew that have gone to do a mission on Mars. And this is called the Ares 3 mission. And when they're on Mars, they run into some troubles, which was unexpected because there is a huge sandstorm that happens. And this sandstorm actually gets them to be like, hold on, we need to leave. Let's abort the mission. But one of their crew members, called Mark Watney, who is played by Matt Damon, actually gets hit by some debris, and he is presumed dead by the rest of the crew. And they make the tough decision to actually leave him because they needed to abort and leave Mars, which like is kind of mad, right? That they just left him
savage
there.
I don't think that would be like normal procedure, surely. Like, Surely not. You would have to take like the body back for the family or something like that. I don't know.
I guess it depends like how much danger were they in. Like if they think, oh, he's dead, and then they think like if we don't leave right now, we're also going to die. Maybe you just be like, sorry, Mark, we're off.
That is so bad. Yeah, you would have definitely thought that they would have taken the body back. So whatever. They made this executive decision, left him, and headed back to Earth. So aborted the mission on Mars. And then suddenly Mark wakes up and he realizes that he's been abandoned on Mars. Like, what would you do?
Oh my God. Well, you're just laying there on Mars, like.
And you realize your crew has literally just gone. Like,
nah. What would you
it's
actually
given,
do?
Terrifying.
It's given this concept, but like on steroids. You know, when you were a kid and you'd go to the supermarket, but you might like lose your mum.
Oh my God, yeah.
And you're just like so panicked because you're a little kid, like don't know what to do. It's given that, but like 1,000 million times more because he's just got nobody.
I mean, that would be loneliness on a whole new level. Like anyone who's like broken up with their boyfriend recently and you're feeling lonely, like at least you're not Mark Watney on Mars alone. Do you know what I mean? Because that is, yeah, it could be worse.
Or maybe that's what some people need, space away from their ex. Like, see ya.
Literal space.
Can we put all of my exes on Mars, please?
Oh yeah, please.
Petition to get them all on the next flight out there. So yeah, anyway, he woke up there, and if I was him, I would be saying every swear word under the sun, being like, what absolute bleep, 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 because you've just left me. But anyway, this is where we get to our first bit of exposing the science of this film, because according to scientists, a sandstorm on Mars is actually unlikely to cause the issues that we're seeing. So obviously we mentioned that Mark was hit by debris, but on Mars, the atmosphere is actually a 200th the density of Earth's. So this actually means that even if there was a really crazy sandstorm that was happening at 150 kilometers an hour, it would actually feel like more of a gentle breeze than it would be, and it wouldn't be strong enough to actually hurt anyone. So that's not an actual accurate representation of what
and like what was the
Mars.
debris? What hit him?
Oh, I can't even remember what it was that hit him, but yeah, it's true because it's just sand, right? I'm trying to think.
Yeah, like what? Maybe it was something from their like ship or something.
I think it was probably something to do with the ship that like in the gust of wind.
See, this is what absolutely amazes me about films is like the very core of their plot is always scientifically flawed. Like last episode, we talk about the Alzheimer's drug leading to the simian flu pandemic in Planet of Apes. And then now this, and it's like just the very core is just inaccurate.
Yeah,
which is mad.
You wouldn't be stranded there because this wouldn't happen, mate. So whether any of the other science is accurate, like sure, but you would never be in this situation unless something.
Also, you would hope that their ship would be like strong enough to withstand like a strong sandstorm because it's gonna literally be floating in space. Like surely. It's going to come
asteroids.
Yeah. Well, I might remember it incorrectly, but were they not like walking around on Mars and then I don't remember.
Were.
Yeah. So then
Taz, have you seen the film?
Yeah, but ages ago.
So I think the ship was fine, but they were like walking around doing something, and then it started, and then he got hit, and then they thought he was dead, so then they got in the ship and just like flew off. Like, see ya.
Yeah, very interesting.
Okay, so I think we can conclude then that the likelihood of him actually being left behind is quite low for several reasons, but nevertheless we need a plot in the film, so this is what we're left with. So what does he do then if he's stranded? You know, we were just saying like, what do you do if you wake up and you're literally on Mars alone? So what did he do?
This is why I actually giggled to myself watching it, because Mark literally says, well, I'm gonna have to science the shit out of this to basically survive. And I was thinking that's such a good saying. Like, I'm gonna start saying that in the lab, like, let's science the shit out of this today. If you guys have actually tuned into the final episode 8 of our season 2 of the So Culture podcast, we did a science quiz. So I don't want to bring a dampener onto you guys' understanding and knowledge, but personally, and maybe I'll speak for all three of us, I don't think we would be able to science the shit out of surviving on Mars based on the fact of our answers. Some of our chemistry was lacking, physics non-existent.
Babes, everything was lacking. Even our biology was lacking. Everything was lacking.
My
Everything was
mentality
lacking.
would be lacking in that situation.
He's doing a lot better than us. He's got his head screwed on. But in this film, he is essentially a bit of a genius because he knows a lot of things. So anyway, what did he actually do to survive? He had limited supplies with him because obviously they weren't meant to be on Mars for like an extended period of time, and he didn't really have all of his stuff because the crew left on their big ass ship, and he had no way to communicate with the crew to let them know that he was still alive, or with NASA on the ground in Earth. Like, I actually just am so confused as to how you start thinking like, I'm gonna science the shit out of it.
I just wouldn't. I'd just be like, it is what it is. Like, I am screwed, and that's that, to be honest, because I just wouldn't even know, like, surely you just die of hunger. Like, what do you eat? Like, what would you do about food? First of all.
One thing that he did do was he had some potatoes that he had as like supplies, and he was like, right, I'm gonna have to grow these on Mars. And so he was trying to grow potatoes on Martian soil, which is obviously not the same as normal soil. But luckily for Mark, he holds this book up and he's like, well, luckily I'm a botanist. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So he's just gonna know, like, even though I know how to grow plants, like, I don't know what to do on Mars. Like,
I just put the seed in if you've got a seed.
Well, it's a potato. He just uses the potato as the root.
Like, here's a test. Do I know? I would put the potato in the ground, cover it with some soil, and water it.
Bro, you're on Mars.
Yeah, but it's not. No, I'm talking about like if you're on Earth, how do you grow?
Oh, yeah, on Earth.
Yeah.
But me and Taz are like, well, yeah. Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I would know how, but I mean, is it? Anyway, I'm going to shut up and let you just explain how it's different.
Okay, so he uses his poo as fertilizer because you do need nutrients in normal soil anyway.
You know, I just said, like, I'm going to put my exes on Mars. Like, a certain ex would just be thriving.
He'd have to do all the pooing.
He'd have all
in the soil.
Oh my God.
He'd have all the fertilizer, babe.
So people that might not have listened, this is a back reference to an earlier episode in season
Episode
1 where
4,
Taz,
season 1.
where Liv told us about an ex who had a poo fetish.
Poo on a plate. That's a lasting effect on me. But obviously, talking of poo and how he used it as fertilizer, like, what if he's not getting enough nutrients from, I don't know, not eating, or like, surely you also need like water and light as well.
Yeah, that's a major point. So I don't know if you guys have noticed or seen from when Mars rovers have been around that the concept of like life, how we were saying, like, are there aliens? You would need water for a lot of life to sustain life. But on Mars, there's very limited access to water. And so a lot of the water can be found in the form of ice in the atmosphere as water vapor. So it's not actually readily available. Like, you can't just go to a lake and scoop up some water for your crops. So it is a little bit different. And in the film, Mark does something that, again, I'm like, how does one think this through? He took some leftover fuel from the crew's lander, which is just part of like their ship. And the fuel that they use is hydrazine fuel. And I'd never heard of this type of fuel, but actually it is used for rocket fuels. It must be some kind of like really powerful, important fuel. And it's made up of hydrogen and nitrogen. And it has a smell that could be similar to ammonia. And what he did was he separated the hydrogen and the nitrogen by dropping the hydrazine onto catalyst iridium. Can't lie, I don't even know what that is.
What is a catalyst iridium? And first of all, how can you have all of this knowledge and then also have the equipment to accompany that knowledge?
This is the thing. So he basically used this fuel and like burnt it, or he burned the hydrogen once he'd separated out the hydrogen and the nitrogen. And then when it combined with the oxygen that's in the air, it then made water in the form of condensation. So as a bit of a background, he'd like got the soil and made almost like a greenhouse type vibe. So he got these plastic sheets, which again, where do you get this from when you're on Mars? And then he had this like furnace in the middle, and he had separated out the hydrogen and nitrogen and then burned the hydrogen. But he actually blew himself up essentially.
I remember
and it reacted, and it was like a big bang.
But can we just rewind the plastic sheets? Like, where did he get them from? Was it from they were doing something like, obviously they were going to Mars for a mission? Did they already have like some kind of tent
he
thing
must
set
have had
up?
it.
Yeah. That's
Because
insane.
even for the film, it is so kind of scientifically accurate that I was like, can this happen? And while I think a lot of people or critics were like, you would just blow yourself up, you would not be able to withstand that, the concept and the chemistry of doing it is actually sound. So you could produce water. I was like, given the situation, like, would I? Well, no, we know I would never think, let's make water from. Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, that's how they were like thinking about doing cars powered by hydrogen, right? Because the only like byproduct from that is water. But it was like, it's like too explosive, I think, or like not a super viable like fuel or energy producing thing for cars.
yeah. But anyway, so he's made water. So now he is able to water his potatoes and has like a decent crop. So basically, the hydrazine fuel that was used is actually really highly dangerous and toxic. And so it could cause inflammation, burns to humans, and it is also a carcinogenic. So if he was exposed to it for a long time, or if he somehow like consumed it or whatever, he would then be at risk of, say, getting like cancer or something further down the line.
I feel like that would just be the least of your worries at that point.
Yeah, true, because at least like you're still alive. But another point that's like dangerous, not coming from the hydrazine fuel, but actually if you're growing crops on Mars, one thing that was not mentioned or referred to at all in the film, but Martian soil is actually really rich in perchlorates, which can self-react to chlorates. And these are problematic because when they are ingested, they can have really severe health effects because they can inhibit thyroid glands. So you would have problems from that. And I think in one of the other episodes, Taz was saying like she would be fine with eating potatoes. That would be her one food like that she could pick because it's versatile. But imagine like you actually living on just potatoes and not really getting all your other nutrients. Especially because I think he ends up being on Mars for a very long time. Like it's just not a good diet to have. So again, that could be quite problematic for someone.
Just eating potatoes. Oh, absolutely not.
It's worth mentioning he's doing it to survive. Whereas if we were actually trying to colonize another planet, you would have more than just potatoes you were growing.
I remember when he ran out of ketchup as well. I was like, damn, that's off.
Yeah, but then it's also like, bro, you've got ketchup, so like that's how it's good food. But again, if you were colonizing Mars, you couldn't just have a lifetime supply of ketchup. You need to be building factories to keep making ketchup.
Yeah, true.
Obviously, talking of like just eating potatoes and stuff, obviously he was surely limited by what he had anyway. Like I think if we were going to colonize Mars, we would take like loads of different seeds and stuff. But like, would it even be possible to like grow other food on Mars, do you think?
Yeah, so that's actually funny because one of my mates that's doing her postdoc in my lab now, she did her PhD on taking algae to space. It was like the wildest
cool.
PhD topic. You can actually take them in like small quantities and they grow, like their doubling time is pretty quick. They're going to have good, you might not get huge yields from them, but they would be a good like substitute for that, all the nutrients that you might need because you'll be able to grow them with light through photosynthesis. They also produce oxygen. So it would be like this really great feedback loop and they would take up carbon dioxide.
Wow, that's so cool. So far, it seems like this has actually been the most accurate, like scientifically accurate film that we've covered so far, which is so cool. But what else did
Apart
he do?
from the sandstorm.
Apart from the sandstorm,
The whole
you're
basis
right.
of the
whole basis of the whole plot. But what else did he do to help him survive, like during this time? Because you've got food, you've got a little bit of water, but what else did he have to do in order to survive? Like also, I think mentally as well. Like there was a lot of things that you would need to do mentally in order to actually get through that. Like you'd need some kind of hope. Do you know what I mean? Like something to give you hope and make you feel motivated to continue. Do you know what I mean?
I would literally be going crazy. Imagine just being on your own. When I'm on my own at home, I'll be singing. I talk to myself. Like imagine not seeing another person or not even being able to communicate with anyone would literally drive you insane. But what he does do in the film is makes these mini vlogs. He's like a good little YouTuber because he just starts recording his days. Or not, it's not even like a day in the life. He'll just be journaling
Day in the life
about
of
his
a guy
day.
stuck
Like,
on Mars.
that is what it would be like now. Imagine you're like, have I got
Literally.
enough power to charge my phone so I can make TikToks?
You know,
And then
as
you've
well,
just got
like
all this content.
Apple in their recent WWDC as well, actually we just released this new feature where if you haven't got any Wi-Fi and you've got no phone signal, you can connect to a satellite. So like maybe one day he actually could be posting them on TikTok. Like, I mean, actually, I'm sure if he managed to do that, he would probably contact NASA, not post to TikTok. But
or the TikToks would go viral and NASA would be like, damn,
true,
he's
best of
alive.
both worlds. Goes viral and he gets help.
That's actually amazing. Connecting to a satellite. That's quite cool. Anyway, he does try and communicate with NASA on Earth. Yeah, and in the film, NASA actually noticed that he is alive before he's able to contact NASA. But they know this because there's some satellite images and you can see movement. So you can see that he's like moved solar panels or something. And at first, the people, like the team on the ground, are literally like, that's impossible. And they're like, no, that has to be him. Like, he must be alive. And then for Mark, he's obviously just this all-knowing guy, like props to him. He remembers that back in the 1990s, there was a device that was sent to Mars and it was buried there. Or it wasn't even buried. I think there was some problems, so they couldn't bring it back. But under the dust, it had settled, so he had to kind of like dig to get this machine out. But he remembered the location, actually used a rover, got in his little rover machine to like drive around, found the spot, dug it up, and got access to this old machine or like satellite. But obviously this machine was from like the 90s, so you'd be thinking, well, like, how can he then use this to communicate? But I guess a computer's a computer, so you can kind of figure some stuff out.
I mean, he seems like the type of guy who just knows everything. So if he can get the machine, figure out what's wrong with it, then I guess that will help him fix it. But I don't know. It depends what's wrong with it.
Yeah, exactly. I would have no idea how to even determine what's wrong with this machine. I say machine, it is like I want to say like maybe a satellite or an actual rover itself. And what he did was he used solar panels, which he must have had from his vehicle or spacecraft. And he was able to connect to give it power. And once it was on, like he was able to do some stuff, change some code or whatever and fix it. So this machine actually is called Pathfinder, and I think it is scientifically accurate because NASA have sent a Pathfinder or a device like this before to Mars.
Oh, cool.
So it could be that like there actually would have been something like this stuck on Mars. And he used solar panels and managed to connect to it. However, critics do mention that the computer that is on Pathfinder would have probably been broken because it had been like over 30 years since this was actually buried. It's been buried under the dust in Mars. Like, would it actually still work? But he eventually gets it working. And then he can use this type of code called an ASCII or ASCII2 codes to communicate with the team on Earth. And it's an easier way to communicate than like using the alphabet. So it's less letters, but it is a type of chart where people can communicate through like symbols or almost like a different kind of alphabet. And so what they do is quite clever. Like they can use the camera on the Pathfinder to access and move it like left or right. So you can like, what he does is he'll stick in loads of different letters into the sand, and then the crew on Earth can access the Pathfinder through the computer, and they can like move the camera left or right to be like picking letters to try and communicate with him that way, because they can't like they can't have like video communication or anything like that. But yeah, then they end up working on figuring out how he can change a code in his rover to actually get better communication using like another computer. And again, it's just like there's so many techie people that must know how to just come in, edit it. Like he basically hacked his own system on his rover to then have like text communication with them. And that obviously helped him kind of have hope and more of like a rescue plan, because if he didn't have communication, like fair enough, he's growing potatoes, but like that's only so good for a
Exactly.
certain amount of time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so he can now communicate. So how does he get back to Earth, and like, is it realistic as to like what would happen in real life?
So initially he was gonna just get supplies, or there was gonna be a crew, I think, that were coming in like X amount of days. It was probably hundreds of days, but then that
Yeah.
wouldn't be good enough. But also one thing that I actually failed to mention was once he was able to communicate with Earth, he had asked like, oh, what did the crew think about me when they heard, like, what did they think when they heard that I was still alive? And on Earth,
Yeah.
the whole point of the film was that they were like, we haven't told the crew yet because they need to get back from their mission.
Mhm.
So the crew was still unaware that Mark was alive on Mars, and they'd like left because they could have turned back round, right, and like gone to save him. So Mark was obviously very mad because NASA would not let the crew know. But then eventually they did tell the crew, and so the rescue plan was able to be done because the crew were on board with essentially returning to Mars. And the way that they did this was probably a little bit wild. And again, I failed my physics A level, so we ain't going into the math here, but it's called a gravity assist maneuver, or also known as a gravitational slingshot. So one scientist on base on Earth at NASA came up with the idea to use the vessel from the people of the crew that were going back. This is called Hermes. They wanted to, on their way back to Earth, they could slingshot around Earth, come back around it, and then like shoot off back to Mars. So it sounds quite counterproductive
Casual.
because they've already just done this journey kind of back
Yeah.
to Earth, and then now they're going back to Mars. But the way that this gravity assist maneuver works is that it can increase your speed and direction, or change your direction, because when you're getting closer to a planet, you can use their gravitational pull, and that can actually like cause you to speed up or change your trajectory.
Mhm.
So they actually then wouldn't be able to land on Mars to get him. He would somehow need to fly out to them to like meet them, for them basically to catch him.
Mhm.
And then that's like their plan. And it's a bit wild because the crew are like, we should do this.
But like, how easy would it be to actually pull that off? Or like, yeah.
Yeah, and this again, I think why The Martian is such a good film. Obviously, some people absolutely like shit on it and say that they don't agree with half of it. Maybe because the sandstorm was so unrealistic that they then base the rest of the film off of like, this is not right. But in terms of this gravity assist maneuver, it is true. It has been done before. And this maneuver was done in 1959 with a Soviet probe called Luna 3. Put that in your brains in case you
Okay,
get
Luna
asked
free,
that at
Luna
pub
free.
quiz. And again, with other spacecrafts like Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, I'm saying it like I know about these Voyagers, but there was multiple times that they've attempted this gravity assist maneuver and it has worked. And so let's get into the basic principles of how this maneuver actually works. If you have your spacecraft and it's getting closer to a planet, it will start to accelerate as the spacecraft gets into the planet's gravitational field. So then it will gain the additional velocity from the planet's orbital motion around the sun. And so then when the spacecraft leaves the gravitational field, it has a completely like new trajectory and an increased speed. So the analogy is you're standing on a train platform and the train's coming past you and approaching the platform. And if you threw a ball, a tennis ball at the train, and you threw it at, say, 20 kilometers an hour, and the train that was approaching you was approaching at 50 kilometers an hour, the ball would then hit the train and then bounce off and leave the train with twice the velocity of the train. So the train's coming at 50 kilometers an hour, but the ball has its own velocity of 20 plus twice of 50. So it would actually then be 120 kilometers an hour, even though you've
Damn.
only thrown the ball at the train at 20. So it's
Okay,
gained extra. The gravity assist maneuver would help this crew on Hermes to get back to Mars a lot quicker than their return journey was, so they could get back to Mark like at a quicker pace than what it's taken them already. But I think that was quite good and quite clever that it could happen, and that is basically what they do to get him.
Okay, yeah, so that sounds so cool, and it's really nice to hear that this is all based off of correct science. And I feel like we've praised this film a lot. You know, we've said they've got this right, they've got that right. Was there anything in the film that they got wrong?
Well, obviously, other than the sandstorm.
Other than the sandstorm. Sorry, I keep forgetting about the sandstorm. I'm giving them
The
too much credit.
sandstorm was the major flaw. Yes, there's quite a few things that they potentially didn't really cover. Was that being on Mars means you get higher exposure to space radiation than you would on Earth, and this is to do with the fact that on Mars you have less of a strong magnetic field, whereas Earth has a larger magnetic field, which helps to protect us from solar radiation. So Mark ends up staying on Mars while he's stuck there for 500 sols, which is their terms of like days and stuff. So it's equivalent to 1.5 years on Earth. So he would need some special protection. Otherwise, he would literally have been exposed to so much radiation that actually you're kind of screwed. Another thing that I think the film and probably the book got wrong was that Mark actually used his rover to travel a lot in the film. That was kind of a big part of the film itself. So he had to travel to get different resources. He had to travel to get the Pathfinder for the computer access. He actually used his rover when he was traveling like this long distance. He realized that when it got towards night, he would be really cold because the temperature difference would change a lot. He picked up this radioactive material and dug it up so he could use it for heat transfer. And this actually does work because it was a radioisotope thermoelectric generator. And so the way that this works is that it is due to the radioactive material decaying, and that would actually give off heat. But people have questioned it, saying, well, he would be exposed to radiation, so he would just die before he would like take the benefits from the heat. And also it would be very, very hot. And he wrapped it in some gold foil, which I think was just to help insulate it slightly so it wasn't too hot. But the problem here is that would it actually just cause so much radiation poisoning that he would die?
Mm-hmm.
The material that was coated around the radioactive isotope anyway should be enough to hold it in, like so that it wouldn't cause any damage to him. However, if he crashed in his rover and then that broke, it would be like game over, I assume. But that's another thing they didn't really discuss in the film, how with his like constant travel, how he actually was able to like maintain distance, energy of this rover, and whether like the rover would actually withstand the different like terrain for that long, because he was there for
and also
1.5
like
years.
I'm assuming it's powered by fuel, right? Or no?
I think so, or it could be solar powered. Well, yeah, so overall I do think The Martian is quite a scientifically accurate
very
film.
Scientifically accurate.
I think that's quite nice. Although I think some people would like to be haters and be like, no, it's BS. But I like it. I thought it was a very, very good film. And I think...
So can I just say that for any of our listeners, this opens up like really interesting thoughts about how being a scientific advisor for films would be such a fun job. And I feel like it's a job that like most of us don't think about, but these kind of films, they do have scientific advisors, right? Surely.
I'm going to put that in my bio, guys. Do you think I could get work? Because I would love to do that, be on set and be like, that's not how you use a pipette, kids. Like, come on.
Exactly.
This is how you do it.
So surely they do.
Imagine?
You know how you have like scientific advisors to like the government and stuff. Like probably a film like The Martian has 100%, either its writers were scientists or they've had very good scientific advisors. So like imagine that you just sit down and you get to write films like this. So cool.
Okay, well, we can put a petition in that we want to start doing that as one of our extra jobs.
Yeah, so if anyone's thinking about career choices, this could be potentially one for you.
Okay, and with that is the end of exploring whether we could actually live on Mars, how scientifically accurate or relevant The Martian is to real world problems, and like, would you be eating your own poo covered potatoes? Like, maybe not, but if it gets you through,
well, they weren't covered in poo; they were just used as the fertilizer.
Kind of covered in poo. He's not.
Yeah, people do that anyway. It's just like coarse poo.
Yeah. Okay, well, that was so good. Thanks, Yaz. I really enjoyed it. And it was really good to cover a film that was more accurate than the other films that we've covered. And speaking of other films or series that we're covering, Taz, can you tell us what we are going to be covering in next week's episode?
Yeah, so next week we will be covering the Jurassic Park series.
Yes.
And
My
we will be
favourite.
exposing how scientifically accurate these films are. So I'm actually really excited for this.
I'm
episode.
excited. That's a classic
Me
film.
too.
Like, everyone has seen Jurassic Park because it's just one of those iconic films. So I'm very
Yeah.
excited for that. But
Yeah,
before
very
next week,
excited.
let's get into today's laboratory section, and we are bringing something fresh and new to you for this week. So let's get into it.
But I'm worth it, 'cause I'll slip into your dreams tonight. Oh, so give me your I'll stick like glue inside your mind.
Okay, so this week we're obviously doing something a little bit different. So we've decided to introduce a way of including you guys a bit more, especially if you don't have like a necessarily like really like gossip to share with us. So we thought we could get you involved in another way. So for this season, we are including some polls. So you may have missed it, but we put some polls on our Instagram stories, and we're basically going to just like discuss the results because I actually think it's quite interesting. We've got results that I wasn't actually expecting. So I'm going to go straight into it. And the first poll was I poo at work. So before I release the results from the polls, because I don't want it to influence our opinion, do you guys poo at work? What are you saying?
100%. All the
Absolutely
time.
not. Absolutely
Every day.
I do.
pretty
not. And
much.
I'm sorry, I hate people like you. And I have an absolute horror story about people pooing at
Wait,
work.
before you say that, I don't poo when it's like cubicles. It's like if it's a disabled toilet, you can shut the door.
Wow.
Yeah, I prefer that.
I wouldn't do it if it's in a cubicle.
But
Like,
I
next to
will
someone.
also poo in a cubicle. Like, I don't care. But I'll find a time where there's no one else in there and I'll go.
Or at work, we have doors that actually like completely shut and they haven't got like the bit above and below, like where you can. So they're like individual cubicles completely.
Nah, it's not okay,
So,
guys.
like,
It's really not. Like, save it for at home.
Why?
Like,
but
it's
if I
just
need
not,
to go,
no, like, you know,
because I
get
drink
your
coffee
bowel
and
routines in order. Or, like, literally get them in
I
order.
poo like 3 times a day. As his face. I don't poo once a day. Like, I can't just do it before work or when I get home from work.
Also, I
What,
poo
you-
at like 11 o'clock, like on the dot. And if I don't do
You've
it
got routine.
then it's usually just after lunch. No, it just happens. Like, usually it happens at 11. Or if it doesn't happen then, it will happen after lunch. And like, girl, I'm not holding that for like 4, 5, 6, 7 hours until I get home. And I also
just feel
leave for
like
work too early.
it's just
No,
not
Liv, I'm going to
okay.
say you work from home a lot, so you haven't got to be in the lab and office
But even
all
when
day.
but even when I didn't, I still didn't. When I
So what did you
worked,
do?
like,
You just held
full-time-
it?
No, you just like get yourself in a routine and like, you know, you go before or after work. Like your body just knows like, see, I actually get a bit like anxious. I get anxiety about it. Like genuinely, I have shit anxiety because whenever I go on holiday, it's really bad. I actually get really bloated because as much as like it's a bodily function, it's a normal bodily function, like you need to go, but I actually cannot bring myself to do it. Like it takes me a few days to like warm up to the new toilet environment. But anyways, let me tell you the horror story at work because it was, you guys are literally not going to believe me. Like you're actually not because, and I actually just don't
think
even
I
tell
will
this
now.
story because it's like so f***ing unbelievable. Okay, so I walk into the toilet and I was like, first of all, it just always smells like, it always smells because people shit at work. And why are you subjecting me to this? It's just so frustrating because it just stinks. I was like, okay, standard procedure, but today it smells a little bit worse than usual. I was like, okay. So I like go in, open the door, and the sight before my eyes was just unbelievable. I'm talking around the sea,
Oh.
like on the
At
floor,
work, yeah, no.
on the wall, on my life. I swear on my life.
How
on
do
the
you get
wall.
shit on the wall? Like, I'm not
How do
actually
you
going to
get
lie to you.
on the wall? It was genuinely the worst thing I think I've ever seen in my life. And I thought at work, but then also part of me was like, I actually think this was like a traumatic experience for
accident.
this person. Like it was traumatic because there's no way that you get on the wall or you get it everywhere without having
Maybe
a
they, like,
traumatic experience.
pulled the trousers down and it was like so touching cloth, like it was just
100%.
ready to come.
100%.
Do you guys say turtle
But-
heading?
Yeah.
What's that?
Turtle heading, where like the
Turtle
poo's
heading.
literally just like coming out, like, you know how a turtle's head comes out.
Why is this even a discussion on our podcast? Because this is disgusting.
I'm so open with my poo life.
I actually
No.
had a really similar experience to you, Liv. So back when I used to swim, I remember we turned up to a training session and they were like, oh, training's cancelled, like someone's pooed in the pool. And like at this time we were like, thank God we don't have to train today, yay. But we were like, let's have a shower anyway, like we're here now, we might as well have a shower, wash our hair and stuff.
Oh, I'm gonna be
So me
sick.
and my friend like went into like the private cubicle together. And I'm not joking, someone had like smeared poo like all over the shower, and then there was like a toilet adjacent, and like poo was all over, and there was like bits of poo on the floor. So not only had they pooed in the pool, but they'd like basically spread their poo everywhere around the changing rooms. And we were like, how? They literally must have like grabbed their poo out of their arse.
Stop.
This is too far. But what I will say about that is, at a swimming pool, probably a child, but at work where I work, not a child, a grown adult who, you know, should be a fully functioning adult. So I understand that maybe you had a traumatic accident, something happened, you're very unwell, but why the hell did you not clean it up? Why did you
maybe they had to rush home. Maybe they had actual...
I don't care.
But then someone
happening.
else then has to clean it up. That's so mean.
Someone else has to actually wipe your poo off of the walls. Also, what if you walked out and then, like, because there's only 3 toilets. So what if your colleague was literally waiting outside and they just like are like, I just don't understand.
Not gonna lie, when someone even just leaves poo in the toilet, I'm literally like, why? Like, it takes 2
It's just
seconds
unacceptable.
to, like,
I'm sorry. I don't care what anyone says.
Disgusting.
It's unacceptable, and we should not be pooing at work. Save it for at home. But if you really have to go, because I understand that sometimes you might have to go, you can't help yourself. Can we please clean it up? A bit of spray
and just like flush the toilet and use a toilet brush if you need to clean the toilet.
Okay, well, let me get to the polls right before we move on, because I feel like we are good representatives here of the general population, because 66% or 2/3 of the polls said, yeah, they do put work, and 34% / 1/3 of the people said that they don't. So
I'm with the 34%. The majority of you are mingers. That's it. Got it.
We're 2/3, me and Taz, and you are the third. That is absolutely
I think unless you have
stats.
No, toilets are there for a reason. If you have good personal hygiene, you can use the toilets. If you don't, please do not, and stay at home.
Anyway, can we move on, because this kind of makes me feel a bit
up. Okay, so the next poll was, you pretend your working life is hard to fit in with everybody else.
My working life isn't hard, as in my actual job. It's actually so easy, and yeah, I love it. But however, I will say that my working life, if we're including content creation, is so difficult, and it's so busy. So it's hard to say my working life is actually hard, and I don't pretend that it's hard, because it is. But my actual job is not hard. So I don't pretend, no.
But if someone said to you, like, oh, I've had such a horrible day at work, like, it's been so hard, would your automatic reaction be like, oh my God, same, like, I've had such a hard day, Well, this is the question I'm asking you. Do you just say it for the sake of it, or do you say it because your working life has been hard?
In that response? Depends who I'm talking to, because if I then were like, oh, my day's been fine, then that might trigger that person.
No, you don't say that. You just say, oh no, that's shit. Not, oh yeah, me too.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I'm more the first.
To be fair, sometimes Gage does say to me, like, my boyfriend says to me, like, oh, I've had such a long hard day, and I think to myself, I say to him, oh yeah, me too, but then I think to myself, my day's probably been bloody easy compared to yours. I've just been sat at my desk making a nice Instagram reel. I've been doing some coding, doing a little bit of writing here and there, and he's there like chopping wood. So like actually, if I take back I would say my life is stressful, but I definitely sometimes do say like, oh, my day's been so difficult, when it really hasn't. So I'm actually going to say yeah.
Yeah.
What
I
about you,
agree
Taz?
with that. I agree. Like, I think I have a bad habit of being like, oh my God, same. And then I feel like it kind of takes away from like the fact that whoever you're talking to has actually had a hard day. If you're like, oh yeah, same. Because it annoys me when people do it to me as well. Like if I've genuinely had like a really hard day and then someone's like, oh yeah, same. I'm like, no, you haven't. Your day has
You
not been
literally
as hard
haven't.
as mine. Like,
But
stop
then I've
pretending.
seen posts about that, and people like, some people, they might feel like they're relating more to you by being like, yeah, me too, trying to be understanding, and that's their way of being understanding, rather than it being like, oh look, I'm now talking about myself. Because sometimes I feel like I might do that, not in the case of this, but it might just be like, I'll then bring up a story to try and like help relate to that person,
think
but it
that's
doesn't mean
different,
I'm
though.
just trying to make it about me. But I think it could be similar, right? That they're like, oh, me too, it's been hard. Maybe they're not actually making it up, but they found parts challenging. Or people could just be wanting to change the subject to them rather than.
Yeah, I mean,
talk
I
about
guess
the
it's
other
all
person.
relative as well. Like a hard day to you might not be a hard day to someone else. Like, so I think it is all relative. But yeah, my answer is yes, I do lie sometimes.
Okay, let's go to
Yeah.
the polls. So it was quite split, you know. So 40% said he maybe, and 60%
okay.
was no.
Only
So it's quite a lot of
40%.
people that
Interesting.
no, I think you've got a lot of people admitting that they do, right? So I'm like, it's probably more than that in reality.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Reality check, guys. My initial answer was no as well. And then when I thought about it, it turned to yes. So maybe after this, some people's mind will change.
Yeah.
I think so.
Because I actually thought it was going to be like loads of people were going to be like, no, I don't do that. But actually, 40% of people versus 60% is that way more people than I thought it was going to be, you know? Okay, so the last statement for today is you are inherently a pessimist. And this is the answer with the polls that surprised me the most, okay? And the reason we're laughing is because we've already discussed this, guys. And I just came straight out and I accused Yaz of being a pessimist. And she was like, hell no.
Oh, gosh.
Taz was like, on your stories, you're always on about how like stressed you are and negative you are. So now I'm going to put a story out and be like, guys, I'm not that negative. I'm a realist. I am stressed, and I feel like it's good to talk about my stress so other people that are stressed feel like it's normalized, because a lot of people don't talk about how hard some days are. Most days, all days. It's kind of all days for me.
Oh,
don't, because I'm actually going to disown Taz. We're not
I'm
talking.
staying out of this.
Liv's literally just been on
You
mute,
are
just
not
like-
staying out of this. You literally agreed with me the last time we spoke about
No,
it.
actually, what I said is that Yaz is either extremely pessimistic or extremely optimistic. There's no in between for her. It's one or the other.
Maybe I need to go to therapy, guys. Or I do still go to therapy. Maybe I'll bring that up with my therapist. I don't really have any words, because either you're going to think I'm pessimistic if I say anything, or I might be too optimistic.
Just say it. You're going to be surprised by the polls. So, like, your default is to be pessimistic, basically.
Oh, yeah, I actually am, because then it's like a nice surprise. So I never get let down, really.
I am definitely not a pessimist. Like, I am the complete opposite of a pessimist, I think. Like, I always see like the worst thing could happen to me and I will just laugh. Like, I never really get like super frustrated or super angry. Like, of course I do sometimes, but I think the majority of the time I think that's one really good quality of mine, is like no matter what happens, I stay really like level-headed and optimistic about things.
I think for me, I also suffer from really bad anxiety. So maybe it's coupled, because I do catastrophize anyway. And I always think the worst before it's going to happen. So then I think my pessimistic attitude probably comes in, that it's like, if you think the worst anyway, you're pleasantly surprised when like good things happen. But then equally, sometimes when good things happen, I'm always like a bit more pessimistic, like I didn't deserve that good thing to happen, why did that happen, or something bad will happen now because something good happened. Like, I do think I have quite a negative outlook. Yeah, but I also think like when I'm in the lab, if I have more of a, it's sort of like, oh, we'll just see what happens. It's not like, oh yeah, I'm going in and like this will work the first time. So then I don't really get disappointed if like things don't work, because I'm like, I'm sure it would work next time.
That is true, because I always think, oh, this is going to work out, this is going to go amazing. So then when it doesn't, I'm literally like, what the hell? Yeah, I guess that is a downside of it.
Yeah, that's quite good.
What about you, Taz?
Yeah, for me, I think I'm inherently an optimistic person because, like you, Liv, I kind of struggle to see where someone who's like inherently a pessimist, I definitely clash with those people a lot more.
Yeah.
But I think also, like Yaz, where my pessimism does come in is literally completely always associated with my anxiety or something. So like I think inherently I'm an optimistic person, but like the fact that I have anxiety, that brings pessimistic thoughts in.
So yeah, let's see the polls. Like, what did everyone else think?
Yeah, so this is where I was quite surprised because I kind of thought everyone was going to be like, no, like I'm definitely optimistic generally, but 69% of people are with you, Yaz, that they are a pessimist and they're inherently
Really?
pessimistic. And then
Oh, damn.
31% said, no,
Interesting.
I'm 100% an optimist. So yeah, I thought that was so interesting and also
That
good
is
that people can
interesting.
be honest on our polls.
Yeah, literally.
I like these polls. This is really cool to get everyone's like reactions as well.
Okay, so
Yeah.
us people in STEM, the conclusion here is everyone's at work. Everyone's really busy and everyone's pessimistic. This is just a brilliant advert for working in STEM. Okay, well, that was so much fun. So we are going to be doing these polls every 3 episodes. So if you want to take part in these polls, then please head over to our Instagram and follow us on there so that you can take part in the next set of polls that we do. Until then, we will see you guys next week where we are going to be covering Jurassic Park and we will be reading a listener story from one of you guys. So we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye. You've been listening to the So Cultured podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Make sure you listen in next week for more science and tech updates and the hottest laboratory.
You can stay up to date with us in between episodes by following us on Instagram and X at soculturedpodcast.
See you back here, same time next week.